Hello, and welcome to Beyond Borders, a space where we break down barriers between people, technology, art, and mental health. Stay with us for open, thought provoking conversations that spark ideas, challenge perspectives, and bring us closer together.
Welcome to Beyond Borders, where we break down barriers between people, technology, art, and mental health. Stay with us for open, thought provoking conversations that spark ideas, challenge perspectives, and bring us closer together. I'm Sprenko, and I'm here with our hosting team, Pim, founder of Digitize, and Carolyn Hammond, a transformative artist, business mentor, and community builder. And today, we're diving into something every artist, entrepreneur, and creative has to face: visibility. It's not just about posting online, it's about getting seen by the right people in the right way. And let's be honest, it can feel exhausting. So let's break it down. What works, what doesn't, and how can we continue to show up without burning out? Every creator, brand, and business needs visibility to succeed. But it doesn't always come easy. There's a struggle to create and build an audience across multiple platforms to maximize your reach and carefully navigate these murky waters without losing sight of one's vision or self. Pim, what do you think?
Well, nowadays, everybody needs to be on every platform there is, which can be very difficult for businesses and artists in general, because it's very overwhelming. When you just look at X, Instagram, that already takes time. Then there are some people who want to be on YouTube, which takes much more time. When you go to more for the business side, which is LinkedIn, and some people even use Facebook for it. That needs more and more and more time. So being visible everywhere is not really doable for a single person. And definitely when you're looking at burnouts and actually keep enjoying creating, because that's the thing that creators say a lot all the times. I'm a creator, I'm not a marketeer. And that's the thing that is going to be very difficult when you actually want to build a career as a creator. Now, Carolyn has been doing this for years and with multiple ways via X. So I'm very curious how what she thinks about its visibility and can it actually be done in the correct way.
Yeah, Pim, I completely get that drive to be everywhere all at once. And in some respects, it is important and it's something that I've felt too. I think on one level, the instinct isn't wrong. The more threads you weave into the web, the more visible you can become, especially when it comes to credibility and searchability. Multiple touch points across platforms can, indicate consistency, authority, and even help with how we're picked up in search engines. So, yes, I think there's some truth in that. And I've seen that play out myself over the years. But I think trying to maintain a strong, consistent presence across all platforms is challenging. That's a whole different story. It's exhausting. And honestly, it's not sustainable for most people, especially as artists, we're often working alone in isolation, and we don't have a team of people sitting behind us. So if you're a one-person creative industry business, then, you're gonna head for burnout, as Sprenko touched on at the start. So I think if I had to give one piece of advice at this point for somebody starting out with visibility, it would be this. Start by understanding your audience. Who are they? And more importantly, where are they? Where do they live? Where do they hang out? You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be where it counts. Are your people mostly on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn? That's where your energy should go. It doesn't mean to say you shouldn't have touch points on the other platforms, but where do you need to put your energy? And once you've figured that out, get really clear on what you want to say, your message, your tone, your style. That clarity becomes your anchor, no matter what platform you're on, because visibility isn't just about showing up. It's about showing up in a way that resonates. That makes sense, Sprinko?
It does. And you touched on clarity, and that's a very important aspect of, the conversation because everybody wants to build a strong presence, everybody wants to be seen, but I see a lot of creatives second guessing themselves when it comes to putting their work out there. Well, a lot of us have been there, right? But it's like they worry too much about what people will think, and that goes beyond imposter syndrome. It's like, what are people going to think when I put this out? Is it good enough? How would they receive it? What would their feedback be? And it's just a whole lot of second guessing. Now, Pim, I'm thinking from a media and marketing perspective, what are the key things people need to get right before they start putting themselves out there in order to build a strong online presence?
Make a plan. I think that's step one.
Mm,
Then that plan comes with a lot of research into your own brand and the brand that you want to showcase, which actually helps you understand your own business and what you want to show. Um, when you research your own, let's say, brand you want to make, you already figure out what type of content you're making, who you're making it for. So the platforms that are more specific for your audience is gonna show up. And with Web2, it's a lot more on X than on Instagram. So what Caroline does very greatly is when it comes to spaces, uh, everybody who comes into the spaces is familiar with Web3 and it has something to say and it has something to make an opinion of, which they can tell in her space. That's great branding when it comes to target audience. When you make a full plan, so let's say for all the social medias or medias that you want to use, it can be quite time investment definitely from the start because you're probably going to make a 3 to 5 week plan before you even start actually making content. You're going to make content according to your plan, uh, and then it's not guaranteed that that plan will work. Um, so that's definitely a difficult part, and I think when it comes to making that content, most people don't have any experience with SEO or social media marketing. So how are you going to figure that out? I think that's the big question. I'm not sure, Caroline, when you started your Web3 spaces, did you think about any of that or how to make the content, what type of content you want to make?
That's an interesting question, Pim. And I'm chuckling because, you know, I have this tendency, and I've shared before, I think that I like to clear the decks before I start anything. So I have
mm,
this perfectionist mentality a little bit. So everything has to be just right before I go. And you know what? I've learned over the years that that's just insanity. It's the route to failure because you can, things are never perfect and you've just got to go for it. And I think social media is such a moving, fast moving. It's like trying to jump into a moving river and hit a target. It's next to impossible. So you've just got to go for it. You've just got to jump into that river and go with the flow and learn as you go. It's about evolving. It's not about perfection. I see, I've done it myself and I see it in other people. A lot of people holding back, waiting for things to be perfect, but it's not about perfection. It's about progress. Social media is a place to grow out loud, out there, be proud, get yourself out there, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes. And that's the best foundation for social media that I can share, really. Do you agree with that, Pim?
Yeah, I do. And for you, Franco, what did you do? Because you have been more active on LinkedIn as well. What do you make up of it?
well, um, it's a very interesting one because, you know, from a mental health perspective, and this is not being, professional or anything, this is what we face, even ourselves, right? There's a lot of comparison. A lot of people are scrolling through social media, trying to start up a brand, trying to set up your content pages and all that. But there's so much comparison. You're making your workout videos and you're looking at, somebody who's supposed to be your mentor, and you're like, oh, this is the way they're doing it. Mine is not good enough. I need to start doing it the way they're doing it. And that sets a lot of people behind even before they start. So these are things that need to be considered. Like you said, Caroline, people need to focus on who their audiences are, what they want to do, the kind of content they want to feed those people, and then, prioritize building on, what they've started putting out. And the big question that I have now when I think about it is, Caroline, you've been there across LinkedIn. Pim said I'm active, but geez, have you seen Caroline? you know, she's showing up everywhere. She's active on Instagram, she's active on LinkedIn, she's active in the X spaces, and I keep thinking, how do you handle that pressure when showing up online and having to make a mark, knowing fully well that you're not the only one in that niche and you're probably not the loudest voice? How do you handle that pressure?
Oh, I'm definitely not the loudest voice, that is for sure. But you're right, there is a pressure and it's definitely a challenge. And it's easy, I think, to start looking at other people in the way that you described, Sprenko. What are
Mhm.
they doing? Yeah, oh, I can't keep up with that. I can't match that. How are they doing what they're doing? I think what I've learned over the years is to tune out the noise of what everyone else is doing. I don't
Mm,
care. It doesn't matter to me. That don't get me wrong. I do look at what other people doing from a point of view of research, but I do it from a step back. I'm not comparing, I'm not contrasting. I'm looking to see, is there anything I could be doing differently that they are doing, possibly?
mm,
And I think that's the key, really. And when you're constantly seeing what everyone else is doing and you're immersed in that in terms of comparing yourself, that is when stress starts to come in. And that is something I've managed over the years to just put to one side. I am just doing what I'm doing, and that is it. So I think with a bit of mindfulness, I think it's possible to navigate social media in a way that feels grounded, even nourishing, because I do feel that bizarrely. And I know that may sound a little bit strange, but I think, and maybe you can identify with this, Sprenko, because from the point of view of Web3 Wednesday and the spaces that we do, I get so much from that, from the people, from the community, from what
mhm.
it is we're all trying to do within Web3. So it can, with a little switch, you can get benefit from what you're doing. It's not just work. It's reciprocal. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make a lot of sense. I love when you said it's not just work. And that's something, a lot of people need to really understand and imbibe. You have to do it because you love it and you want to use that knowledge, that skill, that content to create an impact. So you're not showing up every day because, oh, I have to do it because I have to make money. You're doing it because you understand you have a role to play and your content creation is just, the means to achieving that goal. That sound like something you can resonate with, Pim?
Absolutely. And I think the only thing that I was also thinking of is when you are a creator and you're, let's say, an artist, showing, let's say, your work in progress, better known as WIPs, uh, it's very important for possible collectors as well, seeing how you make your art and actually showcasing, let's say, your skills and your passion to others. I think that also helps when, as you said, you need to do it not just for the money, but also for yourself and actually
Mm,
showcasing your passion. I think doing that actually helps you with, okay, this is what I do, this is what I love to do, and I'm here to show you. I want to join you, and that you join me in my passion, and hopefully you like my art, or even like how I work with my art, and you're gonna try it yourself, or doing it for future projects together, etc., etc. I think that's a great thing of showing, let's say, what you really like to do. What about you, Carolyn?
Yeah, I think we're actually touching on something that is super important here. And where I'm coming from is, when we think about social media and we think about the algorithms that sit behind them, they're not what they used to be. And expecting huge organic reach can feel defeating. We see it going on all of the time on the timeline. People are not happy. They're not happy with their reach. They're not happy with what's going on. It's a bit gloomy in terms of social media. But I think We've begun to pull at a thread here, and the thread is that what matters now is engagement, real engagement. And I know that we all get it, but I want everybody listening to hear this and to understand it because it is super important. People who connect with what you're doing, as you just said, Pim, amplify it because it resonates. How powerful is that? That is super powerful, and that is better than any algorithm support that you may or may not get. And this is the key, and we all know this as well. The kind of engagement, that kind of engagement has to be mutual. And one of the things that I don't do on social media, and I know you don't either, I don't take a transactional approach. If I want support, I also show up and support others. It's about community, it's not about competition. So, it's that thread that I think is super important for anybody building on social media to understand, not in a cynical way, not as a strategy that's going to get you what you want. Because actually, if you don't show up authentically, people feel it. And it's as simple as that. And I think that is, kind of a shared way of thinking about social media that we have. Sprinkle, you get that?
I do. And, you said something. If you don't show up authentically, people feel that. That's spot on. But I keep thinking of something. We're trying to amplify visibility, right? Show up, show out, get the impact, get the engagement. But how then do people know the right platforms to choose and stick with? Because obviously you cannot be everywhere all at once. What are your thoughts on this, Pim?
I think it depends a little bit of what you do. Um,
Mm,
for example, when you look at art and let's say Web3, you have Twitter that's very known for having artists on there, people who are working with crypto and building on blockchain, etc. That's very known. But when you just look at art alone, there is a lot of there on Instagram, but they don't mention Web3 or whatever. They just showcase what they made. So it's more like an open gallery which you just go, you can go through it, you can showcase your art. And I think that's a lot different than looking at Twitter. And when you
mm,
look at TikTok, for example, I don't really see a lot of artwork coming by, which is quite strange because all my algorithms are quite, let's say, artistic and creative.
mm.
But when I look at TikTok, it's completely different. I think, more an overall algorithm that it's fit for the country that I'm in. Because, for example, my languages are not set to my own language, but I see Dutch TikToks, which is a little bit difficult to understand when you're looking at algorithms. But they probably just take location. Okay, this is your location, and this is the type of content you're going to see. And
Yeah.
also nowadays, if you're making content, a lot of things changed when it comes to your, let's say, account. I used to run a trading page a couple of years ago, and when looking at posts and the interaction that I had with the posts, many people who interacted with the post went strictly to my DMs. They wanted to go further on the questions and actually searching mostly for help with their trades and investments. Um, which I did for free because I've been trading for quite some years and it's more like a fun thing to do than actually getting paid to do. Well, I stopped with the account for a while and tried to do it again, and a lot of things changed. So the views stayed the same, but and the likes also. But when you look at followers who were following the account was a lot less, but the comments also stayed the same. So I think a lot of things change when it comes to what platforms provide in the sense of things you can measure instead of really showing you the engagement that you get. I think those are two different things now. You can be a small account and still have great engagement and actually build in a community, but we're not really leading followers when it comes to your account. But you can still build community, and they probably choose different applications like Discord, and if you have a website where you build in internal community, people will prefer that. I think that's a big change when it comes to searching for the right platform to use. I think the right platform to use is actually the platform that you can make and provide a community for the people who want to join in. Um, Same with, for example, the space that Caroline is doing. We know there is a common group and people are really interacting within that group. And I think that's a great thing to see. And maybe Caroline can elaborate on that further, how that developed over the years and how she wants to develop it in the upcoming years.
Thank you, Pim. It's an interesting question because, as you know, Web3 Wednesday, in lots of ways, evolved organically. From the connection with two people that wanted to do spaces, and then trying to think, I think, really about who we were as people and what we wanted to do, what we wanted to bring to Web3, and so the the spaces and the community evolved with us. And it's difficult because I often question myself in terms of the direction of travel of Web3 Wednesday, but it's it's become such a labor of love now that in lots of ways I don't have to think about it. I think anyone who's engaged with Web3 Wednesday over the last 2 years knows what we're all about, knows why we show up. Then Sprenko's on the team, you've been on the space, Pim. We're such I think, a cohesive group that are just showing up and helping and building and trying to lift the space and lift people in the space to do more, to achieve their goals. And so it naturally, I think, attracts people that are looking for, and it's been described, and it kind of sounds corny, and I don't mean it to, but looking for a home in inverted commas. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
got that vibe about it. And I don't know how that's happened. I don't know in some respects where that's come from. But you know what? I love it. I love the question, Pim, and I love not being able to answer it fully because I don't have a strategy with that. And I don't have a particularly firm view of a direction of travel. I think I'd like us to evolve. I'd like us to grow as a community because that benefits everybody. But outside of that, I think we just want to continue to do good. Does that make sense? I haven't really answered the question and I apologize, but that just shows, I think, as I said, I haven't got a firm, clear roadmap for Web3 Wednesday, which also isn't like me. I normally know my direction of travel, but it's kind of different. It has a life of its own, if you like. Does that make sense?
I absolutely makes sense, and I also agree. Uh, I think for many people who are joining a community want to feel like home and also want to feel like they are heard when they have questions or when they have a story which is something to tell. And I think your community is a great example of that because I've seen people sharing stories that are off topic, but people interact with it, try to help, try to understand, or congratulate when there is something to congratulate. I think that's also great for overall mental health, and probably Spranko can agree with that and actually tell more about it when it comes to community building and being heard. Because I know that with Real Talk, you always focus like try to be heard and try to hear everyone and be there for in the community. I think you're doing a great job. You probably can tell more about that.
Yeah, no, Apim, you're spot on with that, and thank you. It's interesting. You say that, Carolyn. With not having to answer it. Probably the way you would love to, but it's beautiful, and I'm saying that because you have just described what it means to be a creator out of inspiration and not obligation. The community and listeners who are coming from far and wide, other platforms that you're spreading yourself across, can feel and connect with you. They understand that it's beyond Caroline or Pim or Sprinkle, trying to show up to create content. We don't describe ourselves as content creators. We're builders, community leaders, we're making impact. So when you create, yeah, you're consistent, you're showing up, You're spreading your tentacles on platforms you have defined as your core niches. You know, it becomes a little bit easier to connect with people, and people just keep coming back because they can resonate with another human being. They can resonate with your stories, and that's why, like with the Real Talk Hub, it's kind of seamless to get new community members. It's kind of seamless to get new listeners because these are real life experiences that are being shared every day. Carolyn does an amazing job with unlocking minds, and that's why it was a no-brainer to for me to be a part of the team, because we're not just hearing people give motivational speeches. We're not just hearing people say, oh, I made this, I achieved that, I did that. We're hearing people share their struggles, how they grew from a web 2 artist coming into web 3, getting their first digital tool, getting to work with the first big brand, getting their first 1,000 followers. That is real life experience, and that's how creators can navigate building a brand, building visibility without spreading themselves too thin. And you both have mentioned two keywords that I've been marinating on for the past few minutes: engagement and algorithm. I have a big question, and I'm gonna start off with Caroline. How do you navigate different platforms? Instagram has its own way. You say don't do this, don't do that, so that algorithm can support your content. Twitter, we're all on there. We know how that works. So how do you navigate, you know, building engagement and fighting the algorithm? Or do you have any hacks or tips that you use to ensure that your content is not lost in the atmosphere there?
Great question. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Viral content. What's that all about this day? It's the holy grail for us all, isn't it? But you know what? I don't think about it anymore, Sprenko. If it happened, that would be brilliant. I'd probably fall off my chair, but I've let go of chasing it. It's as simple as that. I've seen, it's interesting. I've seen posts blow up on X with huge impressions, sometimes just replying to a big account with a simple emoji. And
Hmm.
and what is that all about? So it's nothing to do with your platform. You as an artist, you haven't posted anything about your art. You've just responded to a massive account with an emoji, and your impressions have just gone through the roof. And so for me, while that is technically counting as viral, I always ask myself, is this actually reaching the right people? It's a bit of a scattergun approach. Sure, you might gain a few followers, but if they're not your audience, if they're not here for your work or your message, what is the value in that? So for me, sustainable growth means building something meaningful. It's slower, yes, but it's real. So when you show up consistently, speak with your own voice, and engage with purpose, that's when you start to attract people who genuinely connect with what you do. And I think that's what you do magnificently with the Real Talk Hub, Sprenko, and you too with the Digitize magazine, Pim. So we get it, don't we? What we want is for other people to hear this message and get it too. And I think that those are the kind of connections that you're building that will last. That's why quality engagement will always mean more to me than numbers. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to making, let's say content or whatever, I think I want to give as much as I can to people who see my content. I want to give them information. I want to give them tips. I want to give them an idea who I am, what I do, what the magazine does, what the magazine can provide, and what projects are connected to the magazine. I think that's a great, actually, thing to do. It's like give, 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 and no necessarily taking at all. That's not a guarantee. It's not really a thing I would search for in my content. I just want to help others and giving artists a platform. And I think that's the same for when I look at, for example, Instagram. I I create content via the magazine and I give it, let's say, to the artists who want to be in the magazine, and we collaborate on the post and giving the information about the artist to everyone who's seeing the content. And besides that, the content does a lot greater results than the overall content over the page, also because you are connecting more accounts to, let's say, the same project. And you got also more people who are responding to it, who find it cool, who like the magazine, who really like the artist. I had some great people who were messaging, can you contact me with the artist? And I was like, absolutely, here you go. Send all the messages to the artist you need to. I'm happy to help. And I think that's a great thing that social media can provide. And I think for Spranko can also really help with that because when you look at his content, it's giving information, giving help, reaching out a hand for mental health. I think he does that greatly, and I think uh, probably I hope Spranko agrees on that.
No, I do. And, we've touched on a lot today, building that, brand, getting yourself set up for visibility, understanding your audience, trying to understand what works for you to achieve the most engagement, understanding how to properly position yourself to, ensure the algorithm works for you, you know, and I think one of the most important things anybody can take away is, you know, there's no need to chase virality. When you're authentic, people would connect with you. Find out what makes you want to start what you want to start anyway. What are the values that you have that people can align with? Those values that would be the center of whatever brand you're trying to build. And it's been a very insightful one today. But, before we wrap it up, what is one key piece of advice, you would like to share with somebody who's struggling with, social media visibility? Pim, anything you want to, share there?
Try to enjoy it, even when that can be very difficult. I think social media is a part of the things you might be doing, and try to showcase the things that you really had fun with. If it's just creating or collaborating, because that content is easily made. I think that's my tip for today.
I love that. I would say it's not about how many people see you right now, but the impact of today's posts on tomorrow's viewers. Caroline, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think my last piece of advice would be, in the words of a famous sports brand, just do it. Just do it. Just show up imperfectly, learn as you go, and don't let fear keep you invisible. Life is too short. It flies by in an instant. And the last thing you want to do is, be going into your advancing years thinking, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. Oh, if only I'd done that. Or I should have done that. Don't do it. Just do it. Learn as you go. That's my thoughts, Renko.
I love that. And it's just amazing tips, guys. If there's anything anyone can take away from today's conversation, it is this. Visibility is always about being everywhere all at once. It's about showing up where it matters, staying true to your voice, and creating meaningful connections that last. Whether you're just starting out or refining your strategy, it's important to remember this. Consistency beats hard work. Authenticity beats perfection. Engagement beats numbers, and your message matters more than any algorithm. So take that next step, guys. Post the work, start the conversation, and own your space. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on our social media platforms. We'll be back next week with more insights, same time, same place. See you then. It's been Beyond Borders.